case discussion in class is actually done differently between Espen and myself. I focus very much on group processes, and Espen focus very much on individual processes. So, Espen, can you tell me how you work?
Yes, I teach cases in most times the sort of classical way. If you read or heard anything about case teaching, this is sort of the big thing, the classroom discussion that everybody's so worried about. Actually, there is really nothing to worry about. If you come prepared and you had a group discussion, you made some notes, and you make those notes to prepare for opening a discussion. So if the teacher asks you, and the teacher can do that in several ways. We have something called a cold call, and that's when I say, Jim, why can't you open the discussion for us? What's your opinion on this case? And then Jim, the student, is supposed to give a little introduction to the case and sort of lay out the problems. And if there's a specific question about what to do, provide the solution to that problem, or just answer the opening question. That's called a cold call, and a lot of students fear that very much. It's not that dangerous. Get used to it. A warm call is slightly different. That's when I say, I'd like Jim to open the discussion, but first I have this message. And that gives Jim a little bit time to prepare and quieten down and sort of know what to say. And then I can also do an open call, which is basically saying, would anybody like to open a discussion? Okay, but the teacher in a case discussion will call on students, and will also call on students who do not put their hand up. So, even though you don't want to say something, you may still be called on by the teacher to say something. So you have to be prepared. By the way, if you haven't prepared for some reason, a sick child, you've been sick yourself, or some other thing, which means you haven't prepared, that can happen. But just make sure you tell the teacher beforehand. Because if the teacher calls on you and you haven't prepared, you haven't told the teacher beforehand, then that sort of breaks the whole discussion, and it sort of creates unpleasant situations. Don't do that. Tell the teacher beforehand, and don't do it too often. Okay, so somebody opens the discussion, and then, the teacher, me in this case, will ask, okay, so what do you think about that? And then discussion goes back and forth, and people put their hand up because they want to say something, and that's how it works. And you'll find me sort of asking and hearing and saying, what do you think? And writing things on the board so that to take down things. And the idea is that the discussion should be between the students, not a sort of interrogation back and forth between the teacher and the students, but it should be between the students. They have somebody thinks this, others think that. I've done this analysis. I found this. The answers are different. Now that's interesting. Why? So that's how you sort of go through the discussion. Okay, there are a couple of rules on the road. You have to put your hand up to say, I want to say something. And by the way, lots of people put their hands up. The teacher says, well, what do you think? And when that student gets the floor, everybody else put their hand down right away. Because if you're holding your hand up while somebody is talking, that is an indication that you're not listening and you're not learning. And at the same time, every statement, ideally, in the discussion should build from the previous one. So that, you sometimes hear an argument going down like this, 4 or 5 people saying something, and then somebody says something completely different. And sometimes that it's appropriate, but you can't sort of say, I want to say this thing, and then no matter what's in the discussion, you'll just say that thing because you want that point out. So you have to sort of listen to the others, learn from what they're saying, and do a respectful but lively discussion. That's what we're aiming for. Okay, that's the individual way of teaching, case teaching in a classroom. Now, Hanno has a slightly different approach, which, by the way, I sometimes use as well. So what's your approach, Hanno?
I focus very much on group processes, because when you are in the classroom, all this work as a group, as a team, all the weeks and nights often that you have spent move into the classroom. So actually the discussion is very much, like Espen says, between students. So I am there only to see whether you stay on topic. That's basically what I'm doing. I'm not so much as a driver. So there is one group that did the casework, and that's selected to present the case. It doesn't mean that everybody in the group needs to present. It's you need to get your message across. It's not a democratic exercise where you have voting rights for everybody says 3 sentences. You need to put your message across. Then I usually assign also another group to act as opponents. Not so much that they are counter-arguing, but they simply need to break the ice by asking some questions. Because remember, casework is based on diversity of opinion, or diversity of interpretation. So it's very likely that group A that presents has a very different interpretation from group B, who is sitting there and listening, say, hey guys, we actually had a very different discussion. And from this diversity of interpretation, there comes the case discussion in the class. So that means that groups present and groups open the floor for discussion. And I keep things on topic. At the same time, when that happens, I like to see the line of argument once more. That when you open up a case discussion, you actually say, okay, this is the context of the case. This is the problems that we have identified. This is the context. This is the line of argument we have developed. And these are the supporting analytical arguments that we have developed also to support our line of argument. So a little bit that the line of argument is also clear in your presentation, and other groups can say, oh, well, actually, we think a little bit differently. Now, when you actually can pinpoint that you think differently from what they think, you actually have achieved learning. So that sort of clarity on where interpretations are different, that's where the learning occurs. And that's the reason why I focus far more on group processes, which is not better or worse, but it's simply a different way of doing things.
Now, there is one thing that people think about in case teaching, or when you're a case teaching student, especially in the beginning, and that is you're probably nervous about talking. Some people are, used to talking to in groups or big groups and can maintain their cool and give a very good argument. Others are fearful of talking. And there are a couple of things to say about that. One thing is that, a business education is a management education. That means that you want to be a manager. And as a manager, you achieve things by interacting with other people. And the classroom, don't think about it as a performance arena. Think about it as a training ground where you can make mistakes and try things out and see how it works. Because it's not a dangerous environment. It's an environment where everybody's there to help each other. And the teacher will call on you. The teacher, if you're very, very timid, have problems, ask the teacher to, tell the teacher, and he or she will find a way to get you into the discussion. And then there's the issue of language.
Yes. Yes. Mm-hmm. I always say that this is about the topic of the course. It's not a language training. It is not about perfection, putting the right accents in there. The right commas and so on. Get your message across. And you have a nice slogan about bad English.
Yes. I once worked for a company with people from all around the world, and we made a decision that the company language should be bad English, which probably is, the most taught language in the world. And you should be aware that most people are much more tolerant of your bad English than you are yourself. Okay, so don't worry about it so much. And if you should be using the wrong word here and there and so on. Don't worry. The main thing is what you think about the case and getting your point across, as Hanno says. And now we will wrap up and talk a little bit about reflection, the last part in case teaching, and how to systematize your learning and put it together.